If you've ever mentioned tallow skincare to a dermatologist, or even just searched for it online, you've probably encountered the same response. Don't do that. It will clog your pores. There's no scientific evidence. It could cause breakouts. Stick to what's been clinically tested. And here's the thing, dermatologists are not stupid. They are highly educated, deeply trained medical professionals who have spent years studying skin. When a dermatologist says something, people listen. They should listen. So why are they wrong about tallow? That's not a rhetorical question. I genuinely want to walk through the reasons, the real reasons, why dermatologists as a profession have landed on the wrong side of this particular issue. Not because they're corrupt. Not because they're trying to mislead you. But because of the specific way medical training works, the specific incentive structures of the dermatology profession, and the specific gap between what clinically tested means and what effective means. By the end of this video you'll understand exactly why dermatologists say what they say, and exactly why their advice on tallow skincare deserves to be questioned. Let's start with medical training, because this is where the story begins. Dermatologists go through 4 years of medical school, a year of internship, and 3 years of dermatology residency. That is a significant investment, 7 to 8 years of intensive training after college. They emerge as experts in diagnosing and treating skin disease. What they are trained to do is treat pathology. Eczema, psoriasis, rosacea, acne, skin cancer. These are the things that fill a dermatology office. Medical training is organized around the treatment of disease states, and the tools of treatment are predominantly pharmaceutical and procedural. Prescription creams, lasers, injectable treatments, oral medications. What dermatologists are not extensively trained in is nutrition, ancestral health, or the history of skincare prior to the pharmaceutical era. These are not part of the standard dermatology curriculum. A dermatologist who graduated in 2010 would have had essentially no training in tallow, lard, or animal fat as skincare ingredients, because these are not part of evidence-based dermatological practice as currently defined. This is not a criticism. It's a description of how medical specialization works. A cardiologist is not trained to be a nutritionist. A dermatologist is not trained to be an ancestral health practitioner. The training shapes the perspective. The problem arises when a dermatologist's perspective, shaped entirely by pharmaceutical and clinical training, is applied as if it represents the full truth about skin health. It doesn't. It represents one framework. A useful framework for treating disease. Not the only framework for understanding skin. I want to be careful here, because I'm not accusing dermatologists of being bought or corrupt. Most dermatologists are genuinely trying to help their patients. But incentive structures matter, even when no individual is acting with bad intent. The dermatology profession has deep financial ties to the pharmaceutical industry. Continuing medical education, the training that keeps dermatologists current after they complete residency, is heavily funded by pharmaceutical companies. Industry-sponsored studies form a significant portion of the research base. Conference sponsorships, speaking fees, and research grants flow from pharmaceutical companies to dermatologists. None of this means that dermatologists are consciously biased. But the research they read, the continuing education they receive, and the professional conversations they have are all filtered through a system that is financially dependent on pharmaceutical solutions. Tallow skincare does not fit in this system. You cannot patent tallow. You cannot fund a clinical trial with tallow revenues. There is no pharmaceutical company whose bottom line depends on dermatologists recommending beef fat. So tallow skincare exists outside the ecosystem that shapes dermatological opinion. It's not that dermatologists have reviewed the evidence on tallow and found it wanting. It's that there isn't a well-funded mechanism for the evidence to be generated, published in peer-reviewed journals, presented at conferences, and integrated into dermatological practice. The evidence doesn't exist not because tallow doesn't work, but because nobody with money has an incentive to prove that it does. This is different from tallow being disproven. Absence of clinical evidence is not the same as evidence of absence. especially when the mechanism for generating that evidence is systematically underfunded. One of the most common specific objections dermatologists raise about tallow is comedogenicity, the idea that tallow will clog your pores and cause breakouts. This objection is based on something called the comedogenic rating scale, a 0 to 5 scale that assigns pore clogging potential to various ingredients. Tallow often shows up on online comedogenic rating charts with a score of 2 or 3, which gets interpreted as moderately pore clogging. Here's what most people don't know about that scale. The comedogenic rating system was developed in the 1970s and 1980s using a specific testing method, applying diluted ingredients to the inner ear of a rabbit. The rabbit ear assay. This test has been widely criticized by dermatological researchers for its poor predictive validity, meaning, what clogs a rabbit ear in a diluted application does not reliably predict what will clog a human pore in a cosmetic formulation. Multiple studies have found poor correlation between comedogenic scores and actual acne breakouts in human subjects. A 2006 review in the Journal of the American Academy of Dermatology concluded that comedogenicity testing as commonly practiced has limited clinical relevance. Tallow specifically, particularly well-rendered tallow from quality animals, is reported by the vast majority of people who use it as non-comedogenic in practice, including people with acne-prone skin. Including people who were specifically warned by dermatologists that it would cause breakouts. The real-world evidence runs directly counter to the theoretical comedogenic rating. Why? Because tallow's fat composition, predominantly saturated and monounsaturated fats, closely mirrors the skin's own sebum. Skin does not react to tallow as a foreign substance to be expelled through pores. It recognizes it as compatible. The comedogenic rating system, applied to an ingredient the skin already produces a version of, gives a misleading result. I want to be fair here. Dermatologists get a lot of things right. They're right that not all tallow is equal. Poorly rendered tallow, made from low-quality animals, processed at high heat, not properly purified, could absolutely cause skin issues. The source and processing of tallow matters enormously. This is a legitimate concern. They're right that some people with beef allergies or sensitivities may react to tallow. This is real and worth knowing. They're right that anecdotal evidence has limits. The fact that thousands of people report great results from tallow doesn't prove causation. People's skin often improves for multiple reasons simultaneously, and the improvement attributed to tallow might partly be the result of simplifying a complicated routine that was causing irritation. What they get wrong is treating the absence of pharmaceutical-grade clinical trials as equivalent to proof that tallow doesn't work. What they get wrong is applying a comedogenic rating system developed on rabbit ears to a human skincare ingredient. What they get wrong is assuming that anything outside the pharmaceutical skincare ecosystem has no validity. The most honest position is this: tallow skincare lacks the clinical trial infrastructure of pharmaceutical skincare, for reasons having to do with economics rather than efficacy. The biochemical rationale for why it should work is solid. The historical evidence is extensive. The anecdotal evidence is overwhelming. The absence of a randomized controlled trial is a gap in the research, not a verdict. Let's talk about what the actual evidence shows, not the clinical trial evidence that doesn't exist, but the mechanistic and observational evidence that does. The fat composition of tallow, roughly 50% saturated fat, 45% monounsaturated fat, and 5% polyunsaturated fat, mirrors the lipid composition of human skin barrier almost exactly. This is documented biochemistry. The skin barrier is made of the same types of fats in roughly the same proportions. The compatibility is structural, not theoretical. Tallow contains fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K in bioavailable form. Vitamin A supports cell turnover, the same mechanism targeted by retinol, one of the most well-researched anti-aging ingredients in dermatology. Vitamin D modulates the skin's immune response. Vitamin E is a well-studied antioxidant. Vitamin K supports vascular health and healing. These are not folk medicine claims, they are established biochemistry. Conjugated linoleic acid, CLA, is found naturally in ruminant fat and has documented anti-inflammatory properties in peer-reviewed research. Inflammation is the driver of most common skin conditions: acne, eczema, rosacea, psoriasis. An anti-inflammatory fat applied topically to inflamed skin is not a crazy proposition. The oleic acid content of tallow, particularly wagyu tallow, has been shown in independent research to enhance skin permeability and improve absorption of other beneficial compounds. This is the same mechanism that makes olive oil beneficial for skin. None of this is the equivalent of a randomized controlled trial. But it is a compelling biochemical rationale that the dermatological establishment has not engaged with, largely because it has not had a reason to. Here's what I tell people who have been advised by their dermatologist not to try tallow: try it anyway. With reasonable precautions. Patch test first. Use a quality product from a reputable source. Give it 2 to 4 weeks. Trust your own skin over a theoretical rating system developed on rabbit ears in 1979. The opulent facial elixir by Golden Tallow is wagyu tallow, the highest quality tallow available, triple rendered, sourced from American wagyu farmers, formulated with USDA-certified organic ingredients and nothing synthetic. If you've been told it will clog your pores, I'd encourage you to test that assumption on your own skin. Most people who try it are surprised. The link is in the description. Dermatologists are not your enemy. They are trained professionals working within a system that has genuine blind spots when it comes to ancestral ingredients, non-pharmaceutical skincare, and anything that exists outside the clinical trial infrastructure. Understanding those blind spots doesn't mean dismissing everything a dermatologist says. It means applying appropriate skepticism to the specific things they say about tallow, knowing that those statements are shaped by training that never included tallow, incentives that don't include tallow, and a research infrastructure that has never been funded to study tallow. The history, the biochemistry, and the experience of thousands of people who have tried it and never gone back, that's not nothing. That's actually quite a lot. More on this channel. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Link to the opulent facial elixir in the description. Thanks for watching. Visit goldentallow.com to experience your new glow.